Hello everybody, James here, Ask Dutch Anything, episode 72. We're going to do the very quick version of the intro, then we're going to get straight into your questions, as is Ask Dutch Anything's premise. Oh, hang on, Dutch has got a hat first. You're just showing me the hat.
I'm just putting it on screen. You said something about it last show.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just showing that. That's a nice looking hat, though. It really is. And these hats are one size fit all. It would even fit your big head.
I've got a big head.
You do, really?
Yeah, I do have a...
What is your head size?
Large enough. probably too large for my body, I guess. I don't know, but I've got a big head. Right, so let's do the intro first. So, Facebook, WOSI Network, links in the description. My YouTube channel's James Romero, The Stevie Richards Show, another one coming up in the next few weeks, eventually when we get all the graphics sorted for it. Dutch's books, he's got 2 of them, The World According to Dutch and Tales from a Dirt Road. If you want them unsigned, you go to Amazon, the link's in the description. If you want them signed, email dirtydutchmantell with 2 L's at gmail.com. He also has the diplomas, University of Dutch diplomas for sale. The WCW trading cards and the University of Dutch caps as well, all signed. Email dirtydutchmantell with 2 L's at gmail.com to get prices and availability and all that kind of thing. And the most important email, of course, for this show, if you want to write in, submit your question for a future episode of Ask Dutch Anything, is questionsfordutch@gmail.com. That's what everybody on this list has done, Dutch. So here we go with the first question. Craig from Mobile. It's not mobile, it's mobile. Alabama. Mobile, Alabama. Hello, Dutch and James. Great show. I'd like to ask Dutch if the rings in the territory days travel from place to place or if there were different rings. Did Dutch have a match specifically for a harder ring that required less bumps? Where were there towns where the rings were known for being rock solid? Thank you very much. So, what happened with the rings, or did it depend on the territory?
It depended on the territory. Now, New York, they would put a ring in Madison Square Garden and just leave it there, so they wouldn't have to be moving it in and out. I think Boston Gardens, Philadelphia, and the big arenas, they would let them store their ring there. But the other shows that didn't run regularly, they would transport a ring to the town. Now, about the ring's hardness, WWF for years and years and years, they had a ring they said was like just a concrete floor almost. That's why you saw a lot of big guys. It didn't take a lot of big bumps because their body would just kill them. So, and when you went down south where you had guys taking a lot of big bumps, they figured out a deal, said, hey, we'll make it a little cushiony in the middle so it doesn't kill you when you take a bump. And they were loud. I mean, when you took a bump, you just hear the ring all over the arena. So, the North, especially up in the Vince McMahon Senior in the old days, like when they built that ring, it was building like an addition to a house. That ring wasn't going anywhere. You've heard of rings collapsing. Well, these rings wouldn't collapse. It was they built it like a pyramid. It was meant to stay there. Now, here's another story. TNA, they had their first pay-per-view, and they were 20 minutes from going on the air. Guess what? The ring fell apart. And they were running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to piece this ring back together. They got it together, and in the first match of all the TNA, all the TV they ever did, this guy weighed about 350 pounds. He was a big guy. I forgot what they called him.
It wasn't Cheeks, was it?
It was Cheeks.
There you go.
And he was in the first match of TNA's, pay-per-view days when they started. And I said, well, if the ring holds up during this match, I think we're okay for the rest of the show. But anyway, when having a ring break, it actually embarrassing, because here's a company that's in the wrestling business, and the first thing the people see is the ring broke down and they're fixing it. but they got it fixed and we went ahead.
I'm trying to find. I've actually got the photo. A ring broke in Japan, and it isn't where you'd expect it to be. So 1 second, I'm just going to put it up on the screen. 1 second. So this is on Reddit. This is about a month or so ago.
Oh my
Actual
God.
post sheared almost clean off. You ever seen that before?
No, never saw that.
There we go.
Wow. I've never seen that at all. Man,
Yeah.
who built that ring?
I'm just looking here. So I think it was New Japan. I think it was a New Japan ring. Yeah, so Kurikan Hall, New Japan, 7th of March. Show cancelled due to the ring steel pole breaking up during setup.
Mm. Well,
did you ever...
It happens.
Did you ever get to a point where you turn up to a show and the ring didn't, and you'd have to wrestle on mats?
One time, I forgot where it was. It was before I really got started in my career. I think they put chairs. We had to go out on the gymnasium floor, and they put chairs for the turnbuckles. And we went out there and wrestled, and they sold tickets to this. And we had a match. The matches were just horrible, as you can imagine. You can't do anything. You're not going to take a big slam on a damn basketball court. Floor's, hard as hell. So if I would have been in that crowd, I would just said, give me my money back. That's not what you advertised. And I think some people got their money back, but I think it was people hung around to the end. I'd have been one of the first ones out there asking for my money back, because I think, and a lot of times they tell them, oh, the money's already gone. Well, the money ain't already gone, because the money's going to leave with the promoter when he leaves. If he's still there, the money's still there. But I did it, and I bitched like hell, but I went and did it. I was a trooper that day, and I went and did it.
Do you remember who you wrestled?
I think Randy Savage.
Really?
And oh man, you ought to heard him. Ooh, yeah, man. He was mad going out there. Then he took it out on me. And we were right in the people. I mean, the people, you could reach out and touch them, because they nothing to stop them. They just keep closing in. I said, hell, if they get much closer, they can call a spot for
What are the most common... I know this wasn't the original question, but forget it. What are the most common ways that rings fail? I know obviously the ropes break, but I mean, how common is it for like a bit of the
floor to break?
Yeah, the floor to break.
Again, it's how it's constructed, but it has the boards running across, then it has the plywood flooring. But one of those can break, and the plywood could be old. Sometimes you can step down, these are old rings now. You don't see this now. But you used to, you could go knee deep in it. So, but not today, because all the rings are new. And you know what a ring costs to make?
Depends how good it is. I mean, I've seen some for a few thousand, but I mean, WWE's are probably well into 5 figures. I mean, with all the LED boards as well, they're going to be very expensive.
Well, I knew a few guys who made rings, and they made them fairly cheap. It was like a cheap ring, even back then, was $2,500 to $3,000. And that was a well-made ring, because these guys, they stood by their... And I never heard of any of these rings, any complaints about them. But see, they are different sizes of rings. Say if you were a small promotion and you're going to run smaller places. Smaller places means your floor space for chairs is limited. So they would have a 16-foot ring for that, I think. WWE had 20-foot rings. So you had a lot more room to move around. But it takes a big arena to accommodate that big ring. And the small arenas, I think I have worked in a 14-foot ring, which hell, you're constricted in a 14-foot. A 16-foot ring is probably the more common. And then it goes up to the 18 and it goes up to the 20. I don't think they get any bigger than that.
In the AWA, I think they had 22-foot at one point. They were huge. But it was like back in the very old days, I think.
And very clumsy or cumbersome to erect, too.
Yeah,
it's a lot of weight.
Next question. Eric from Louisville, Kentucky says, on a recent podcast, Triple H talked about threatening to quit after having a bad match with Ahmed Johnson, which we covered last week, in fact. I never thought... Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. But he also said he had a bad referee for that match as well. I'd never thought about wrestlers caring which referee was in their match. How important was getting the referee you wanted for your match? Are wrestlers allowed to pick the referee they want? And lastly, what makes a good referee versus a bad one? Thanks, guys.
Well, refereeing is an art too. I mean, the referee is going to do what the finish entails him to do, but there's ways to do it. I think one thing that these referees need to learn is how to sell. Because when they're hit, they're just laying there. They're out. It's like they take siesta time. I mean, if you get punched and get knocked out, you're just not laying there. The most recent WWE pay-per-view, they knocked that referee out in the main event, which is a cue to fans now to know, okay, we know we're getting screwed. And then, of course, you can remedy that fact by running another referee in, or the referee getting up and resuming. But I mean, I think if a guy gets hit, if he's getting hit in the ribs, I've told referees that. I said, sell your ribs. Go out there and like you have your breath knocked out of you, but you don't need to take all day. The talent doesn't need to take all day or a prolonged period of time to do what they got to do. That makes everybody look like crap. And I've stated my concerns about it before. Of course, my concerns were discounted, and they are. And what makes some referees better than others? Some of them are more. Memphis had a good one, Jerry Calhoun, who you might not know that at one time was the brother-in-law of Jerry Lawler. You know that, did you?
No.
And he worked at FedEx. He worked there 30 years and then he retired. So, not that means anything, but he was really a good referee. I mean, and funny as hell, good guy in the back. Everybody liked him. Good referee. But I've seen some bad ones, horrible ones.
I'll get to some of the questions that Eric asked, but do you know who the referee Triple H was referring to was in his match with Ahmed Johnson that was going south?
I read that.
Harvey Whippleman.
I read it was who?
Harvey Whippleman, downtown Bruno.
Harvey Whippleman. You know, the last time I talked to him, he was still being paid. Maybe I shouldn't bring that up. But I think he's been at home this whole time. Yeah, he may be pulling an Iron Sheik. You know, the Iron Sheik, they thought his contract was up, but they never checked with accounting. And the whole time he just sat at home and they kept sending his check for a year. He never left his house. Nobody ever called him. Everybody ever called him about an ankle. They thought he was done. They didn't think he was with the company, but his name just kept appearing on the pay sheet. Now, why can't I run into something like that?
Well, that's what I said. You need to go to Tony Khan, get yourself a 5-year deal, and then mention you're going to WWE. And then
right away.
Yeah.
Right away. That's what I'll do.
There's a couple of things here.
I'm calling Tony. Told him I'm going to tell him you said that.
Yeah, you need to say you're available. There's one more thing. Did you, as a wrestler, ever get to pick the referee, or were they always assigned to you?
No, they were assigned.
Yeah. Okay. Next question from Ken. He says, Dutch, sometime in the 1980s,
No, go ahead.
You were tag team champions with Tommy Rich. The storyline was Tommy was always late to matches and you were defending the titles yourself, or Tommy would run in to do a save and you turned on him. What was the story behind this turn in your character? The whole setup just seemed strange. Was it a way to turn you heel quickly? So this is Memphis, yeah?
What was his name?
The writer-inner was Ken, and Tommy Rich was your tag team partner.
Well, Ken, the angle was designed that way because we would go to the ring and Tommy wasn't there. Because we told him to explicitly come to the matches at 8:30. So no fans should be hanging around seeing Tommy go in. Because they can say, oh, I saw him, he's here. Nobody ever said that because, we covered that. That's the little detail that you miss, I think, sometimes. And then I would be going against two guys trying to defend the tag team belts because I would try to get it, called off. But the referee said, no, it's booked. You either defend it by yourself or you hand them the title. So I had no choice. So I was fighting for two of us. And we did that for like 2 weeks. And he would always show up, but he was always late. And after the second time he did that, well, I'd been tired. I got tired of that crap. So I beat the crap out of him. So it's not that I beat him up for no reason or attacked him for no reason. I attacked him for not being on time. And then we went on TV and then we did an angle with it. We did pretty good with it. So not to sell out business, but I thought it was an actually an angle that kind of made sense. What would you do if you had a guy you were sharing this podcast with, but he was always late? He'd come in about halfway through the podcast, and he's supposed to be here from the beginning. Well, you'd be saying, damn, I should do it by myself then.
I was say that'd be a pretty boring podcast without you.
But I'm saying, say anybody's job, you're a mechanic, but the guy don't show up, and you're doing all the work while he's gone. Well, you get pissed off too, especially if he was getting paid. And I assumed he was getting paid as much as I was, but I was doing most of the work. So to me, whether it seems strange or not to you, it didn't to me. So what's his name again?
Ken. In fact, why don't we watch it?
Ken.
I've got the video here. Why don't we watch it together?
What is it?
You breaking up with Tommy Rich.
On TV?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
One sec. Right, here we go. Audio, keep it low.
Tommy Wildfire Rich won the Southern Tag titles from the Nightmares right in the ring right here. Unfortunately, an event took place up in Louisville, Kentucky, which we'll be showing you some of it in just a moment.
Let's bring you in.
Tommy, I was shocked, to be perfectly honest about it.
Okay, let's call just like it is out here. Me and Tommy Rich are no longer the Southern Tag Team Champions.
That's right.
Because they're calling it a severe falling out, and that's exactly what it was. Now, we're going to have a tape in just a minute for you people to view, and this happened a few days ago in Louisville, Kentucky. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I had a match, me and Tommy, against the Nightmares right here in this ring.
That's true.
And Tommy didn't show up.
Title defense.
Didn't show up.
Championship.
Because he said he was booked in Atlanta or whatever, right?
Right.
I accepted the explanation. We went on, right? Now we go to Louisville, Kentucky. And the Nightmares are still wanting a match, and we got another match with them.
I think it's important to say that Dutch went ahead and fought the bout, and because of a disqualification,
I'm not quite seeing how you're the heel in this situation.
Yeah, but I did it myself. I did it by myself. Now, we go to Louisville, Kentucky, right? And I'm sitting in the dressing room, right? And I called Tommy early in the day, and I said, Tommy, leave early. Now, get up there because I didn't want to repeat of what happened here on TV. And I got up there, and I sit in the dressing room, and it's matches start at 8 o'clock, and it's 7:15, no Tommy, 7:30, no Tommy, 8 o'clock, no Tommy. So I go to the promoter, and I keep moving the match back and back and back and trying to give him time to get there. And we get to the ring, and there's still no Tommy Rich. And the Nightmares are saying, well, you're going to have to forfeit the belt. And you know me well enough to know I'm not giving nobody nothing. They got to come through.
That's true.
So I go ahead, and I wrestle the match by myself again.
You're agreeing with yourself from 40 years ago.
This wasn't the first time I've done it. This is the second time I did it. And, one time, you might accept the explanation, but the second time I think that's a little too much. Now, Tommy Rich, I'm going to say one thing about him. He's an excellent wrestler. He's a fine wrestler. But you know what's wrong with Tommy Rich? Tommy Rich won't show up. And I'm getting sick and tired of going in the ring and doing my work and doing his work too. When you're a team, you got to work together. You got to cooperate. You got to communicate. And Rich is not doing that.
I think you exaggerate a little when you say Tommy Rich won't show up. Now, Tommy has been a national star. You
don't know if this is where it happens. Bear with us, everyone, audio fans. This is you attacking Tommy. Hang on. So Tommy Rich is still there in double denim, picking up Dutch, raising your hand.
Watch exactly what happens right here.
Oh, he hugged me, see?
I gave you the belt.
And I smashed the hell of it over his head. Good.
If that was Cody Rhodes, he would have lost the world title.
Oh, yeah.
Forward through. Does it go to you again? I think it just goes to Lance.
At least in my opinion, I'm not siding with Tommy. I think Dutch did get a little extreme on it. But Dutch, of course, is a loner. Dutch is a one-way guy. He tells you just the way he thinks it is, and he handled it the way he thought. But the ultimate result is that they abdicated it. Dutch refused ever to wrestle again. He said, no, postponement, no, don't wait 30 days. I'm through. I'll never wrestle with him. And
it's funny, I mean, I know we've said this before, but when you're a good guy or a bad guy, there's very, very little difference in your presentation. Is that on purpose?
No, that's the way I work. I don't look like a baby face. But I always my heel work, I was just aggressive. When I was a good guy, I was aggressive. And the people, they kind of responded to that. So I just kept it the same way. See, if I'm a heel and I go out there and all of a sudden I'm a babyface and I'm laying around selling people, well, that's not my gimmick. That's not my style. And the people, they catch on to it quick. So if they're going to stop me, they're going to have to cheat. They're going to have to pull out the dirty tricks and get me down, double team me. And people can buy into that. So did I tell you what and I heard Cornette do this other day. What is wrestling? Did I ever tell you this about two guys walking down the street?
Maybe.
Okay, here's you walking down the street, and all of a sudden you come to the street corner, and it says walk or don't walk. But then you look down the street here, and there's two guys in a fight. Now you don't have to know who these two guys are, but you go, "Wow, fight's about to happen." So you will stop and see what's going to happen till it's over with. And, usually street fights don't take very long to get over with. So, and finally they start fighting, and then people come in and break them up or whatever. And then you can cross the street and continue to go about halfway down the next block. You stop and think, damn, I wonder what that was about. That's what wrestling is. But wrestling gives you a reason that they fought beforehand. Now they fought. Now they're going to come and fight in front of you again. You go buy a ticket. That is what wrestling is. And if you heard a story, it might really get interesting, like the guy went out with the guy's wife or this, that, and the other. Well, yeah, he needs his ass kicked.
Next question from Eddie says, hey, Dutch, I was watching some of your old matches from Mid-South and I caught a match with you and Butch Reed. I noticed in this match that when you were hitting your elbow drops, you didn't seem to be killing Butch, but when you missed, you were really slamming down hard into the mat. Have you ever had somebody forget to move and really crush them with the elbow or any other particularly stiff move? So, yes, has that ever happened to you?
Well, it probably has, but... my elbow, if they don't move, I'm going to hit them with it anyway. See, the secret is you got to pretend to be killing them, not actually doing it. Because, yeah, you can, actually hitting the mat with him moving, was much easier, harder on me than him laying there. Yeah, but you don't hurt yourself when you miss it. And I wasn't slamming it down. It just looked that way. See? Magic. See, and he was selling it. Butch Reed was a good guy to work with. And did I send you that match with me and Butch from Houston?
I think so. I don't think we watched it on
it was a good match. It was a good match. But I used to love to work Houston because Paul Bosch was one of the better payoff men in the business. They say that Sam Mushnick in St. Louis and Chicago. See, you had three towns. You had Houston, St. Louis, Chicago, right in the middle of the country, and they were all independent of each other and independent of a territory. Say Houston, you think they'd use Texas guys? No, he'd use guys from all over the United States. He'd fly them in, fly them out. St. Louis, the same thing. And see, Brody and that Abdullah and all that bunch, they live for their shows because that's where they made most of their money. So, and the crowds were always good. Houston, like 10,000 every time I was there. Not necessarily so completely out, but a full crowd and loud, very loud fans in Houston. St. Louis too.
We never watched. We'll do it for a future episode, I promise you. But we never watched that 6-man tag match, the Von Erichs, and then it's you and I can't remember who else.
Oh, I beat the crap out of them.
Yeah, like a double ring kind of thing.
You know, that's the first time I met Fritz. First time I met him and the other kid, Kerry. First time I met him. And I never had met him before I went to the ring.
We didn't
that is a pretty decent match. And we went in, I didn't even talk to them or nothing. We just went in the ring. And I'd heard so much about the Von Erichs. You got to watch them because they can be stiff. Well, I didn't learn it in that match. I learned it in subsequent matches and half the time they were like hammered. I got another story I won't tell you now, but I'll tell you in a later date.
Next question from John. Hello, James and Dutch. My question for Dutch is, how come Sid is not being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this year? Does it suggest that Vince McMahon still has pull, or could it be Triple H also has an issue with Sid? If Lex Luger and the Natural Disasters are deemed Hall of Fame worthy, then surely Sid is too the year after his death. Do you think it's just funny WWE are funny inducting people who've died so close to an induction kind of thing? I don't know. I mean, I think most people probably thought Sid was already in.
I did. I really did. I thought he was already in. But I would say that he will go in the next 2 years. I think it's time to put him back in it because he really was a draw for WWE and a big character too, because the way they presented him, and he was the type that Vince loved, big, tall, muscular, and Vince loved guys like that. So, and I find it. Who were the two guys that went in?
Two guys? You mean the natural disasters, earthquake and typhoon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they're in, but taking them over Sid, I don't think the people agree with that. Of course, that is a subjective induction. And if you have any kind of pushback at all, they won't accept you back in there. Not that you've been in there before, but I think Triple H might not like Sid that much. But I think adding him in would be a good addition to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, 2-time WWF champion. He was a main eventer everywhere he went. Some of the more amusing interviews, some of the best interviews, and some of the worst interviews in the best way as well. So, I mean, really
you see the one that he was in Atlanta with Jim Ross, and he started out and he messed it up. He said, "Can we do it again?" Can't lie, pal.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see Sid going, damn.
He just sort of goes, and then just comes back up and just starts it over again. He actually does a really good job.
But he was a good interview, and he had to have that character when he did every interview. It takes a lot of energy to work your way up and have your eyes bugging out of your head and all. So, but what he lacked in like execution, see, he just went out there and beat people up. That's what Sid did. But every time he'd do that interview, he'd have to work himself into that frame, which is he did a great job, because when you watched him do an interview, you thought there's something wrong with this guy until you knew him and didn't know he's a big pussycat.
Well, I know you named him, of course, but you gave him the Sid Vicious name, by the way, if people didn't know that. But did you actually wrestle him, or did you like manage him? I can't remember. Like in the was it in the Fuller territory?
No, I didn't manage him. Bruno managed him in the Fuller territory. Downtown Bruno was the manager. So, but yeah, I never managed Sid at all.
Did you wrestle him?
No, never did.
Oh, there you go.
I don't think.
Well, if anyone can find that match, if it exists, let us know. Next question. Darren, hi James and Dutch. Do you see Vince McMahon going into the WWE Hall of Fame? If yes, do you think it will be after he is dead? Thanks.
That's the question?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I don't see Vince going in the next 5 years.
What if he settles with Janelle Grant?
I think they still need some separation room. I don't think while this is pending, I don't think Vince is going in. I do think that Vince will go in at some point, but they want time and distance between the event occurring and the lawsuit signed and the lawsuit ending. Then Vince may go in. But a lot of people, who would you think would give a testimonial at Vince's induction?
I was going to. Some of the obvious ones would be John Cena, because apparently he loves him. The Undertaker, because he loves him. Triple H, because he's family. Shane, maybe, or Stephanie.
Kane.
I don't think Kane would do it. I don't think he'd be. I mean, I'm sure he'd do it, but I don't think he'd be at the top of the list. Steve Austin, his greatest rival, might do it.
Yeah. Hell, they could just have one ceremony just to do that.
Yeah. Steve Lombardi.
Have people tell Vince stories. Yeah.
Downtown Bruno, the worst referee, according to Triple H, is going to induct Vince McMahon.
That would be great.
Do you think? Okay, I mean the morbid question.
So who would induct him?
Who?
You think Stone Cold?
Yeah, I think
Vince.
if you're going to do a rivalry thing, then yeah, I think as an on-screen thing, Steve Austin would make the most sense if he'd do it. I think off-screen, closest to, if it's a wrestler, I'd say The Undertaker. If it's family, probably Triple H. More than Shane.
Stephanie?
More than Shane or Stephanie, I'd say Triple H would do it.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think? And also, do you think they're going to wait till he croaks? Apparently.
Well, the last time I saw Vince, he didn't look as well as he used to. He's had that plastic surgery on his face.
Yeah.
Doesn't even look like himself, really.
No, what they did was they melted down Vince McMahon and then they reconfigured it and put a beard on it and then called it a Triple H waxwork and took it to the Hall of Fame. He could be his own waxwork, you know.
You are too much. So anyway, but I think he will go in after 5 years. I think they'll settle the suit in the next year, and then he's free to go.
Next question. Michael says, I was wondering why there isn't a lot of wrestling monsters anymore. When I was younger, I was scared of guys like Kamala, the Ugandan Giant. I know there is a few, but why not have more with a manager who talks for them? Okay, I've got a theory here. Dutch, you tell me. Vince McMahon doesn't like fat guys, and therefore, if you're going to be a monster, you have to be a big, muscly monster, and there's even fewer of those than there are, guys who are just large, I guess. What do you think?
Well, I think the day of the big man is kind of, so you see big men all over the place now. In football, in wrestling. You saw Omos. He's the big as they come, and they can't do nothing with him. You saw what was it, the giant guy they had? What was his name?
Oh, El Gigante, Giant Gonzalez.
Yeah, and he couldn't do nothing. So just being big, see, on TV, where you really determine someone's actual size is on TV standing right next to each other. That's when you determine the size, the difference. But a guy just being big I don't think it's going to fly anymore, unless he's a hell of a talker. And you know who the best big man I ever saw was? That knew how to work, that took some bumps, was Ernie Ladd. Ernie Ladd would go out there, and he was a great talker, and he'd talk with his fists like that. And great guy. I used to ride with him a lot. And he would tell me stories and told me a lot of good stories. I would tell a few in here today, but we don't have time. So
I know, searching the archives for Dutch telling the story of Ernie Ladd whacking either Jack or Jerry Briscoe over the head with a pipe. We've got that in the archives, so you can go and hunt for that if you like, if you want
true story.
A good Ernie Ladd story. I think there's a couple on the archives as well. Next question, Chester from Olympia, Washington. I was just wondering what Dutch thought of James when they first met each other. Thank you.
I said, oh my God, another English guy. That's all I need now. No, James came highly recommended, by the way.
By who?
And I forgot. No, didn't you call me or get in touch with me about doing your website, doing your podcast? I mean,
yeah, I emailed you, cold emailed you. You demanded an exorbitant fee for the podcast. And,
yeah, I did.
And then I knocked you down. We negotiated a decent price because when I was doing the interviews, I'm always happy to pay because it's a business, for goodness sake. I'm making money. Why not you? And then you did. Well, no, I'll tell you the story of how I decided to come up with a podcast for us. But you probably didn't remember me after the first one.
Oh, I did remember you after the first email. I knew you were doing a podcast with. Who were you doing it with then? Oh,
Don Morocco at the time.
Don Morocco.
Yeah.
And then you called, and we came up with a deal. And how long ago was that? How long we've been doing this podcast? We've done 100 and something episodes, 115, 116.
That's a good question because we originally started doing it on the WSI YouTube channel. So what we would do is I had a weekly show with Dutch or a monthly show with Dutch. So I think at the time I was going to do a monthly show with like 4 different people and then just have stuff go on the channel. To be honest, I think that would have overloaded it. So eventually, because your stuff was doing so well, we moved Storytime onto its own YouTube channel. And then from then on, that's a good question. The first time we talked was probably 3 years ago?
Probably.
Something like that.
But anyway, this is I was doing another podcast and I was really put off by podcast. They were doing nothing. I mean, I don't know what the subscribers, what the subscriber count was, but it must have been nothing. And then I got with you, and you apparently knew what you were doing. And then we end up today with 128,000 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
it's paying bills.
Hopefully still growing. And we can thank the listeners for that. Thank you guys for staying with us and putting up with our bullshit. But you can say we don't cuss that much on the show. Have you ever listened to Cornette's podcast?
Yes.
Yeah, it's MFer and SOB, and it's like every 5 seconds.
But we changed that early on. Do you remember? We had a conversation about that, and we said, or I think maybe it was you got an email from somebody and said, I like listening to your show because you don't swear that much. And we sort of thought, well, do you know what? I mean, I swear incessantly in real life. And then we sort of thought, you know what? If we just cut out the swear words for the most part, only when it's really, really needed, I guess.
Yeah, if you say, they used to call them bad words. If you say a bad word every now and then, that means you're really adamant about what you're saying. But if you don't say it every other word, and I mean, Cornette can do what he wants to do. I like listening to him. It doesn't offend me because that's his style. So I like to hear him do that. But there are a lot of people out there that just don't want to hear that, and I don't blame them.
I think it's if they've got kids around. It's the same with the Stevie Richards show. We made the conscious effort to not swear because a lot of people write into Stevie and say, I enjoy it because I can listen to it with the kids present. Sort of thing. I don't have to turn it around. I'm going to answer it for you, Dutch. I feel that because I paid you for the first interview, paid you for the second interview, then we worked out a deal that I would pay you every week, and then we'd do the show together. To answer this fella's question, I'm figuring, I was wondering what Dutch thought of James when they first met. I bet you thought, there's a money mark, so I might as well rinse him for all I can.
No, when we started the negotiations, I knew that you weren't a mark. You said, hey, you got to drop it to here. I said, wait a minute, that's more than half. You said, I know, that's all I can afford. I said, okay, we'll do it. Yeah. Because something is better than nothing. And I was looking for a podcast to do anyway.
I thought you were turned off by it because I know the previous
but I was going to try one by myself, but it was daunting to me to try to do something I've never done before. And so with you there, you do the editing, you do all that. So you do the personal work, and I can go on. But if I had to do that, I'd have to learn a whole new system. And I'm not against that, but I just didn't want to at the time.
Oh, it's not worth it. Yeah, it took me so long to learn all this stuff, and I'm not.
Did it really? Now you're turning me off doing it.
Well, no, I told you, because we figured out that we both studied at degree level, like media, technical. What did you do? More radio stuff.
Yeah, I did radio.
Yeah. So you study like radio and and I did like television and stuff, like technical broadcasting degrees. So I thought that was weird that we both basically studied more or less the same thing.
And guess what they taught me?
Jack shit, because I didn't learn
nothing. Yeah. And I'm thinking, you go to college for 4 years, and how much can they teach you in that 4 years? They can get it done in 2 years if they wanted to. But no, let's take 4 so we can yank another year of tuition out of the kid.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't like my course at all, but I didn't learn anything. The only thing I would have learned right is if I did lighting, because lighting is its own science. And I never did that class. So it was a complete waste of time for me. I knew how to edit. We were still learning on something called Avid, which is like really, that's like that. Really old hat now.
They're still around too.
They're still around, but I think everyone then moved on to Adobe, and now everyone's using like DaVinci Resolve and other stuff now. So, but we still use Adobe anyway. So yeah, that's basically how the podcast came about. Is I just wrote to Dutch. The numbers did well, so I said, Dutch, let's do a second interview, like a month or 2 months afterwards, and we did a second one. I remember your audio didn't work, so you had to like crawl up to the basement or something like that, or crawl down to the basement and do the interview.
And see, I did that for the fans. I didn't do it for me or for you. I did it for the love of the fans.
It's a shame because that was a cool looking backdrop. You should have.
Which one? Oh.
I don't know if it was in the loft or the basement or whatever you went to.
Under the house is what it was. Till that rat come along and
took away the microphone.
Yeah, and I had to get out of there. So.
Okay, we've got 2 more questions. I think maybe one. We'll see how we go. Doug says, do you remember a wrestler named Enforcer Luciano? Supposedly a mobster with an eye patch and allegedly had steel implants in his knuckles. He ate light bulbs. Interesting character, but absolutely sucked in the ring and on the microphone. He was brought into Crockett in the Mid-Atlantic region to feud with Blackjack Mulligan, but vanished pretty quickly. Does Dutch remember this guy? Any stories?
I do not remember him. I don't even remember his name. And if he sucked in the ring in the Mid-Atlantic territory, he wasn't going to be there long. And Blackjack Mulligan would have beat the living crap out of him. Because guys, if they work with guys that they're having to help, they don't like that. And Blackjack, this guy was, I'm sure, if I was going to push him in a program of Blackjack have to be on the losing end at some point. He didn't like that. And good for Luciano because the Blackjack could really beat the crap out of you if he wanted to. He was a big guy. He was 6'8", over 300 pounds, and he would lay into you. And, he brought that big arm down on your chest. You were hit. So, but I never heard of the guy. And now, since you describe him, I don't even like the gimmick. So, and I can see if he was a crap in the ring and a crap on the interview, no chance he's going to get over.
Yeah, that was in the mid-'70s, so I don't think you were there at the time. For a very long time, wrestling fans, you may know him as Guillotine Gordon in the WWF in the 60s, 64 to 69. He worked as Guillotine Gordon in the WWF, and he's got not only has he got a raft of names he worked as, one of them was Jimmy Valiant. Oh, sorry, Jimmy Valentine. So maybe an illegitimate brother of...
I think he was.
Greg or Johnny or something like that. I don't know. So there we go. Right, last question, then we're shutting down the show. Greg from Texas says, hey, Dutch, it seems that John Cena's idea of being a heel is to be grumpy and bitter. It doesn't seem to be working. What do you think? Is this the right approach to being a heel? Looking forward to hearing your commentary on Cena's WrestleMania win. Well, that's already happened, and we already recorded it. It's on Storytime with Dutch Mantell, the previous episode to this one, number 132. But what do you think as John Cena's character develops into a bad guy?
I don't have words to describe it.
You really not a fan of it?
No, I'm not a fan of it because I don't think this is what's going to hinder that. People still like him. They like him as the good guy, the good John Cena, not the bad one. So they don't want to boo him. And some of them really want to cheer him. They want to cheer him still. And they're glad. And they wanted him to get to that 17th win. And we all figured out this is the way for him to get it, to beat Cody. I didn't like the way they accomplished it. I think they would have been in much better shape, even with the match being slow and kind of boring and uninspiring. The one element that was missing in this that would have took the roof off that place would if The Rock had showed up and done something. Now we draw that parallel, and we're back to where we need to be with Rock in charge, and he didn't show up on Raw. So is Rock just an afterthought now, or what?
He's like a no thought. That's the thing. I think he's pulled a power play and just wasn't.
Is he still on the board? Is he still on the board?
Oh, he's absolutely on the board. Oh, we could go on about The Rock more and more and more, but we'll stick with Cena on this. If he's going to turn bad guy, if he's going to turn heel, how do you make it work then for you? How would it be authentic?
Well, I think they were rushed into this because they had no plan, and that flies in the face of us saying that Triple H has really turned this creative around because their main angle was Cody and the title and who's going to challenge him for that title. Cena, I think him turning the way he did it shocked people. But now, once they saw it in effect, they don't like it. I mean, even if Cody had won, now they see Cena losing his 17th attempt at it, or for his 17th title reign. That leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But the way they finished it up, and the Travis Scott, it was, to me, it was a mess from beginning to end. Even the vibe with the crowd, you could feel it through TV, or I could. And Cena does not know what to do as a heel. And did you hear his interview at the scrum?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
What did he
say? They ask him a question. They only take about 5 questions. Then they're up and gone. And one guy asked a question, and he says, well, that's I don't think that's relevant to what's going on. Next question. He didn't really say that, but he said something similar to that. And another guy asked him a question. Well, that's not relevant to the issue at hand or something. And he did about 5 of those and got up and walked off. That's it. Highly uncooperative, not friendly, but I don't know. That fell flat too.
How should he do it then? I mean, if he just
know.
wanted to be like, do you just think it just?
I want him to do it and tell me, and then ask me, do I like it? Because he was, when he did interviews, remember he used to do all the little fundraisers for the kids and all this and that and the other. They haven't forgotten that. Wrestling fans, one thing they don't do is they do not forget. And all of a sudden for him to go through all this, and yeah, people could have bought that The Rock put him up to it. The Rock was going to give him everything he had ever wished for in his life. And then The Rock doesn't show up. So The Rock, for all practical purposes, The Rock is not attached to John Cena anymore. I mean, he can inject himself back in there, but he wasn't on Raw. So now I'm wondering and now he may be booked up for movies the rest of the year. I don't know what he's going to do. But why did they start this knowing that he was going to be gone for 9 months this year? Why'd they even start anything last year?
Do you know what's annoying is that, because I'm sure everyone realises because we dress exactly the same, that we record Ask Dutch Anything straight after story time. Here's the problem. The Rock, we're recording this on a Tuesday, The Rock is appearing on Pat McAfee's show today.
Oh, he is?
Yeah. So, but the thing is that for me, it's 6:15 and someone's ordered food in, so we can't hang around for ages to wait for the answer and then include it, which is a bit annoying, but hopefully The Rock is going to address WrestleMania. Here we go. The Rock to address WrestleMania 41 absence on Pat McAfee's show. So hopefully we'll find out.
Okay, well, the Pat McAfee is going to reap the benefits of this.
Yep. See
what I mean?
Yeah. Why does The Rock never do Storytime with Dutch Mantell show? It's always Pat McAfee.
And I knew him when he was 3 years old.
Yeah, he owes you.
He sure does. He sure does. I saved him from the playground one day.
What, from who?
He was left alone out there. Not, alone, but, his mother was talking to Rocky, the daddy, back to where the steps came down from the building. And he was there, and, there was a little bit of distance between him and his mother. So I stood there and watched him a second and made sure he didn't hurt himself on the swing or anything. Then when she started back, I waved at her and she waved back, and then she took over. But I bet he doesn't even remember that. He was 3 years old. How can you forget that?
Kind of sounds like you're over-egging the life-saving aspect of...
Yeah, but...
well, he doesn't know that. He won't remember either way.
No, yeah, he won't remember it anyway. But gives me another story about Rocky Johnson that I will tell in the future.
Somebody write to questionsfordutch@gmail.com and say, Dutch, tell us about that story you were going to tell us last week on Ask Dutch Anything. And if you do,
but you better give me the question So
go on. What was the story you were going to tell? Or at
I
least
can't tell you.
like a line. Give us a line of it so it'll remind you for next week.
Well, I've forgotten it now, but I remember it for now.
All right. Remember it and then forget it again for next week then. Right. We're going to shut down the show. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. That was Ask Dutch Anything, episode 72. Once again, the email.
It's about Rocky Johnson ruining my car by just getting in it.
Have you told that one? Was it something on the ceiling?
Yeah,
the roof.
cigar.
Sorry, the roof. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, and he offered to buy me a new deal, and time run out on us, and I left the territory, and he never had fixed it.
Oh, there you go then.
But I never insisted. I never insisted on it either. So
no. Well, he could have got you a new cigar if nothing else. Well, all right. Don't email into it because we've already heard that story. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. Questions for Dutch@gmail.com if you want your question asked and maybe even answered on a future episode of Ask Dutch Anything. But until then, we will see you on Wednesday for Storytime with Dutch Mantell. We, the people.
The people. See you then.